Obama era, Jake, what's it mean?
Well, a few things. I think. Well, thanks for having me. Number one, number two. I think that. Well, let's put the whole picture together here. I think you're going to have what we said in Playbook yesterday, where we covered this extensively in the afternoon. I think the reality is people are going to take what they want from this report, and I think everybody. I mean, I watched the coverage last night, albeit delayed on both MSNBC, Fox, CNN, and I noticed a lot of people on the right very excited and looking forward to the John Durham report. Whenever John Durham, the U.S. attorney for my home state of Connecticut, whenever he wraps up his efforts in the coming weeks and months, because he does have the ability and the leeway to prosecute, which obviously the Inspector General does not. So I think that is where a lot of the attention will be. A lot of the energy is heading at this moment.
Yeah, there are two things that stood out to me. John Durham, the U.S. attorney you just referenced, issued a separate statement, which is unheard of. I was in DOJ in 1983, 84. I'm in the White House counsel's office, 85, 86, never heard of this happening, saying, hey, I respect the Inspector General, but I disagree with his key conclusion that there was that there was a legal basis for opening the FBI probe. And then the Attorney General came out and said, you're going to have to wait for Durham. But I don't want to overlook what Horowitz found. He found 17 occasions when investigators at the FBI and DOJ omitted key information or conveyed erroneous information to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. That is a horrific. And then I saw James Comey out doing the Wayne Morse thing about Vietnam declaring victory. Do you think, what did you make of Comey? Was it even appropriate for him to be out there doing that?
Well, I mean, he is a private citizen, so he could say at this point whatever he wants. I mean, he's obviously bound by the fact that he can't reveal classified information or otherwise sensitive information. But I will say there are a lot of people who have been put off by Comey for a long time and believe he has turned extremely partisan, which, by the way, I think he's conceded that he does not like the president, doesn't think he's fit to lead, and feels like he could speak freely now about it. But it was notable. I mean, this entire episode, everything from what the Inspector General found to the response on both sides of the aisle, it's all quite notable and quite strange, quite unique to this time period and to this era. I mean, it's unheard of. It's nothing like we've ever seen before.
Now, there's also I'm going to do in the third hour is play a lot of a speech that was given on Sunday by the National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien at the Reagan Defense Forum, not widely publicized because it happened late in the afternoon on a Sunday, in which he says, among other things, 350 ships means 350 ships. It's basically funneling and transferring President Trump's innermost thoughts to the DOD, but you can't get to 350 ships without a National Defense Authorization Act or an appropriation. Is there a deal coming, Jake Sherman, on the Hill? You cover the Hill extensively, the Hill to die on with Anita Palmer. What's going on up there?
Well, I'd say the NDAA is one of the many things that Congress is trying to get done in the next 12 or so days between now and the end of the legislative calendar year before Christmas. It does appear at this point that there is a deal on NDAA. The big sticking point actually had nothing to do with the big deal had nothing to do with defense policy. It was a paid leave provision that Democrats have long been seeking, and the Space Force, which the president obviously is quite interested in creating another branch of the military to explore space. Now, I will say, time is tight, and right now the Democrats and Republicans are trying to figure out some sort of way to get Trump's trade deal through, to impeach the president, to fund government, and to get the NDAA through in the next 12 or so days, which, as you know, and many of your listeners can imagine, is a very heavy lift. Just given the time it would take to get all those things done in divided government is not easy.
And by the way, I'll make that deal every day. The paid leave in exchange for the Space Force and getting the NDAA done, and then the appropriation to follow. I'll make that deal every day. Is that deal done?
It is. It appears to be done. Nothing's done until the president signs it, as you know well, Hugh, but it seems to be done. And yes, the paid leave element does kind of line up the federal government with the rest of the world, the rest of the private sector in America, which has paid leave to various degrees, some more than others. I would say that the Democrats have been long seeking this. Ivanka Trump, the president's daughter, has been interested in this provision, interested in expanding paid leave for people. So it was kind of an easier deal. Now, the USMCA, obviously, is the big thing. And this is what we talk about in Playbook this morning, Hugh, which is an amazing split screen. The Congress is going to – the House is going to impeach the president, announce articles of impeachment against the president, no matter what you think of that, and on the same day deliver the president his biggest legislative victory since the 2018 tax bill, 2017 tax bill. That's amazing. I mean, this is just very bizarre that you would get the confluence of those two events, not only in one Congress, but on one day.
Well, you know what it reflects, Jake?
Today.
It reflects the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is split between the resistance-driven and I would say it's 75 to 80% of the party sort of crazed anti-Trump hatred, and 20% who are living in Trump districts where they've got to bring home the USMCA. And I want to say 100 years from now, we're going to look back at the Space Force and at nothing else, because the Space Force is going to be as big, or if not bigger, than the United States Army. It's going to be a huge deal because anti-satellite weaponry, the defense of our outposts in space, the ability to attract trade in the world. A lot of people think it's kind of like the Bugs Bunny cartoon with the Martian that landed. It's not. It's all about air-land combat. It's a big deal.
Yeah, and you're right. But on your earlier point, Chris Hayes said this morning, or said on Twitter last night, there is nothing else that better encapsulates the Democratic Party right now than impeaching the president and delivering him this major victory on one day. And the left is very worked up about this, and understandably so. You could understand intellectually why they would think it's a mistake. I think Dan Pfeiffer, the former Obama speechwriter, wrote on Twitter, why not wait until there's a Democratic president to get a better, more friendly deal with these countries? And that's a question a lot of Democrats have expressed privately. Why not do that? Why not wait a little bit to make this, to get a better deal if we believe we're going to beat Trump? But that's not what they're doing. They feel like, and I think part of the incentive structure, to be honest with you, is that they need to show they're able to work with the president, not only oppose him, because like you said, there's 31 Democrats in Trump won districts. That's something that's a dynamic that cannot be ignored, and that's extremely, extremely important.
You also note that Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov is meeting with the president today. I want to explain to people, we have been demanding reciprocity of the Chinese and Russians, which means if we allow their diplomats to move without precondition, they've got to allow ours to move. And they come back and say, well, if we meet with your Secretary of State, like Pompeo met with Putin, you've got to meet with our foreign minister, which the president is doing today. It's not because he's their best friend. It's because we are trying to get reciprocity with Russia and China established on every front. I think that we're going to see the resistance fever swamp make way too much of this today, Jake. What do you think?
I think so. I think anything with Russia is obviously fraught. I don't know if it'll be too much, but it'll definitely be an issue today. It'll be something that's talked about today. But again, remember, today is the day Democrats are unveiling impeachment articles against the president. So that's going to take up much of the energy. He's going to go later today to Hershey, Pennsylvania for a rally, obviously in a state that's quite key to his reelection prospects. So I think all of that will be taking up a lot of the energy today. And
is the vote actually going to happen on USMCA today?
No, they're going to unveil a deal. I believe it will happen next week, would be my guess. And the amazing thing is Trump is going to come out of this looking like he was right all along, because he's been saying for months, and Mike Pence has been saying for months, that if they just put this on the floor, it would pass overwhelmingly, and it's going to pass overwhelmingly. I mean, I would predict 350 people in the House vote for this, and 90 people in the Senate, if not more. I mean, this is a trade deal that's just that is popular, and Paul Krugman, who's not obviously a big fan of the president, made the point yesterday on Twitter, that this is not appreciably different from NAFTA, which is what a lot of Democrats and Republicans have said privately, that this is not that different from NAFTA. It's an improved NAFTA, and so that's kind of the dynamic we're working with.
And that's what Trump promised, a better deal, and that's what he's giving, and I think it's going to be a big win for the president. I also think that when we get to the point where people are focused on these two articles of impeachment, there is no crime either. It's a big day for the president. Jake Sherman of Politico Playbook. Thank you. Don't go